Piccaninnie Ponds is a wetlands national park located in the southeastern tip of the state of South Australia. It was officially recognized as a national park in 1969 and is renowned for the flourishing fauna and flora that inhabit the wetlands within the park. Most notably, however, the park is known for its deep, crystal-clear blue waters that flow from underground springs. The water is so clear, in fact, that from the surface, it is possible to see hundreds of feet down below. This makes Piccaninnie Ponds a very appealing location for swimmers, photographers, snorkelers, and divers alike. Beneath the reeds of Piccaninnie Ponds, the pond opens up into a large, deep sinkhole known as the chasm. At about 60 feet below the surface, the large sinkhole splits in two. On one side is a large open cavern illuminated by beams of sunlight from above, offering spectacular views for divers, known as the Cathedral, which is the most popular destination for most divers. The other side, named the Dogleg due to its shape, is a deep open abyss of darkness, with the fissure extending seemingly endlessly below. And for the more adventurous divers, this dark section of the cave would of course prove to be the most appealing. In the 1970s, cave diving was still a relatively niche sport, and much less was known about safe navigation through underwater caves and the effects that descending deep underwater have on the body, and Australia saw a string of cave diving fatalities, largely due to underprepared and inexperienced divers diving to depths beyond their capabilities, often making poor decisions while influenced by the effects of nitrogen narcosis. Nitrogen narcosis is an effect experienced by divers using oxygen, usually with its effects beginning to become noticeable at depths of about 65 feet. The effects of nitrogen narcosis are commonly compared to alcohol, with its onset marked by a feeling of relaxation and calm, with its intoxicating effects intensifying at greater depths. These effects include decreased awareness and reaction times, decreased decision-making capability, overconfidence, and a feeling of euphoria. The safe depth limit for divers using oxygen is generally considered to be around 165 feet, with the effects of nitrogen narcosis becoming dangerously overwhelming at depths beyond 165 feet. For divers descending beyond this depth, it is crucial that they use not just oxygen, but specifically blended breathing gases to avoid the effects of nitrogen narcosis, like the divers in my other video about pleura. Anyways, nitrogen narcosis was a factor in several accidents in Australia in the early 1970s, including two accidents at Piccaninnie Ponds in 1972 and 1974, involving young, ill-prepared, and inexperienced divers descending too far down into the Dogleg. Between 1972 and 1974, 8 divers died while freshwater cave diving in Australia, and there was much public outcry about the deaths, with some calling for cave diving to be banned entirely. As a result of these incidents, Australian authorities began to limit the allowed descent depth for recreational diving, posting signage and monitoring dive sites to make sure that divers did not descend past certain depths. One such sign was posted at the top of the Dogleg at Piccaninnie Ponds, and it became illegal to descend past that point. This didn't necessarily stop the most hardcore of cave divers, however, and the most defiant and daring divers would continue to explore into the depths of the Dogleg. These new signs and legal limitations and greater general awareness about the effects of nitrogen narcosis and the dangers of cave diving seemed to prove effective, as after the 1974 incident at Piccaninnie Ponds, Australia as a whole would not experience another freshwater cave diving fatality for the rest of the 1970s and into the early 1980s. In the early morning hours of April 7, 1984, two good friends and frequent diving partners named John and Barry descended beneath the reeds and into the sinkhole in Piccaninnie Ponds. John, age 28, was a certified Class II cave diver, while Barry, age 31, was certified in basic scuba, but was never able to get his cave certifications due to his work schedule. Nonetheless, he and John had dived in sinkholes together before, so he was not lacking in experience. John had told his wife the previous night that the pair had chosen the early morning because John had an appointment at 10 a.m., but the more likely reason was that they intended to dive beyond the signage and into the Dogleg illegally, and wanted to do so before park rangers or other divers populated the site. Later that morning, at approximately 9 a.m., another pair of divers arrived at Piccaninnie Ponds and were surprised to find another car already in the parking lot. The pair went over to the pond to check for bubbles rising up from below, but they didn't see any. The men prepared for their planned dive and set off into the chasm at approximately 10:15 a.m. As the duo descended down to the top of the dog's leg, they noticed an oxygen cylinder with 2 regulators attached to a lanyard and a white guideline descending into the pitch-black sump below. The pair began to feel uneasy upon seeing this, as they still didn't see any air bubbles coming up from below, and the line floated in the water, slacked and lifeless. The pair of divers followed the line further into the dog's leg to a depth of about 150 feet. There, they noticed that the line had been tied off again at a narrow area near the bottom of the dog's leg known as the saddle, and that the line continued down below. As they peered beneath the saddle, the pair could see the faint, eerie glow of headlamps about 50 feet further below them, and so, at this point, they turned around and, after a proper period of decompression, ascended to the surface and alerted authorities of their grim discovery. Police divers began recovery operations the following day, and upon reaching John and Barry's bodies, it quickly became apparent what had caused their unfortunate deaths. The men were found tangled in a mess of ropes at a depth of about 206 feet, well below the legally allowed depth. The men had become so badly tangled in their guideline that the line was found to be wrapped around both their bodies several times and had become stuck in Barry's open clip on his belt, a notably dangerous type of clip to use while cave diving. There was evidence that the men attempted to untangle themselves, as Barry was found still holding loops of the line in his hand. A maximum depth indicator recovered from the pair showed that they had descended as far as 223 feet. Authorities concluded that the men had probably stirred up the large amount of silt that was settled at the bottom of the dog's leg, lost all visibility, and subsequently became entangled in the guideline. The men were undoubtedly experiencing strong effects of nitrogen narcosis at these depths, and as the men were both diving using a single cylinder of oxygen, they had little hope of ever untangling themselves from such a mess before they ran out of oxygen and drowned. The extreme depth and tangled ropes made recovering the bodies an arduous task, and it took police divers several days to remove both John and Barry's bodies from the site. In the aftermath of the incident, the general public and media once again began to question whether cave diving should be legal in Australia, and while no further restrictions were placed on the sport, the diving community took the pair's deaths as a harsh reminder that even experienced and certified cave divers must be cautious about the many hazards they face on their dives. And Australian cave divers clearly took this tragic reminder to heart, as there was not another freshwater cave diving fatality in Australia again until 2010. Thank you all for watching.